Good morning, everyone. Hello. Let's get that shared screen off. Good morning. I hope you're all well. This is nice. Has anybody actually recovered from School Avoidance Awareness Week before we've committed to this Facebook Live? No, I know I certainly haven't. So everyone, good morning. I'm Chrissa. I'm the founder of Sunshine Support. And this morning, I'm going to be talking to you all about school avoidance. Now, I know that we've talked about this an awful lot just recently, but we want to recap on what actually happened during School Avoidance Awareness Week, because there's quite a lot that came out that is upsetting, but we're not necessarily surprised by. And I think that it's good to get this out in the open so that we can actually make change. Now I'm here, I've got quite a treat for you. As you can see, there's loads of us this morning. What a treat. But I think it just shows as well how passionate we are here at Sunshine Support. And I know that we're going to be talking through our professional experience, but also our lived experience this morning. So morning, ladies. How are you?
Good morning, I'm good. How are you?
Morning.
Oh, God.
Morning.
Morning.
I mean, it is a really strange time out there at the moment, as we were just talking about, because you've got the remnants of Storm Amy. You've got what's in retrograde, Gabby?
Mercury in retrograde.
Yeah. And then we've got the full moon. So, yeah, we're all sat here masking because there's stuff that's gone on this morning that, yeah, we're just rocking in a corner, just trying to be the best we can. So if you're watching, please do say hello. I'm going to keep an eye on the comments. I know there's loads of people watching this morning, which is great, because I know that it's such an important topic and one that affects so many of us, and particularly as I think these other factors are coming into play at the minute. Yeah, my kids are not their usual selves. So let me see anyway who we've got watching. We've got lots of people watching. Morning, Sarah. Do let us know where you're watching from as well. We like to see how far we can reach, but also if there are any themes emerging in certain areas. Morning, Tilly or Natalie. It says Natalie Tilly. And I know you're always on our Facebook, and I love that. So I'm going to go with Tilly. I feel like you're my friend now. Morning, Taryn. Kaylee is watching us, our lovely colleague Kaylee. That was way too many C's and cuz sounds then for me first thing in the morning. So I'll come back to the comments in a second. So before we start, let's do a little intro, because I know that all of you have been seen now on Facebook Lives, our podcasts, our webinars, but could you give us a little brief background as to sort of what brings you here today, meaning at Sunshine and on this Facebook Live? I'll name everybody so that you're not all going to... So Gabby, you're first on my screen. Do you want to go first?
Oh, it's like University Challenge, isn't it? We were all lined up in a screen. Yeah, so I'm Gabby, one of the consultants here at Sunshine Support. I came to Sunshine through a combination of being a Senko who had a child with attendance difficulties, and I was looking for advice, and then went through the lived experience of a child that wouldn't go to school. And have been through that this morning as well. So yes, but all's calm now. We're all settled.
Good, good. Jess T, you're next on my screen.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I'm another SEND consultant at Sunshine Support, and I came from working for my local authority as a case officer for 5 years, and prior to that, I was a SEND post-16 teacher. I would say, similar to Gabby, that I have had a bit of a morning with my son. He's experiencing quite challenging, significant anxiety around transitional stages of drop-off time. So yeah, I felt it personally this morning, but from a professional capacity, working for the local authority, I was seeing things that weren't changing, like school avoidance, and I wanted to make a change. So that's why I've come over to this side.
Brilliant. And we love having you here, by the way. Jess D, let's stick with the Jesses. There's millions of Jesses at
We have
Sunshine.
loads of Jesses. So yeah, my name's Jess. I am a SEND consultant and the pre-lit manager So I came from a very legal background, having worked in a number of law firms. I specialised in education law, and quite a lot of my focus there and now here is seeking interim education for children who are out of school due to school avoidance. On a personal level, I have a child with additional needs. We're currently going through the autism diagnosis process. So we have a lot of anxiety and stress surrounding school at the moment. But yeah, all good fun.
This is very appropriate for you as well, Jess.
It is, yeah.
And Beth, just down the road from Jess, actually, geographically.
Yep, quite
Introduce
close.
yourself. Yeah, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Beth. I'm a consultant here and I have a background in SEND teaching and before that hospitality. And I worked for myself. I had my own company for SEND advocacy. And I wanted to join Sunshine because, I mean, the reputation and the team, it had such a great, it sounded great and it has been great. It's lived up to exactly what I expected. And it's been great to start here and join.
Oh, I love that, Beth. I love that. And we only choose the creme de la creme, you know. So, you know, just saying, guys, gays, guys, ladies, everyone. I was going with girls and guys. Anyway, let's move on. So, foot in mouth syndrome, check. So, if you can see us, like I said, that's just throw me now. I never get it wrong. I'm so good. I'm one take Wadlow. Come on. So, we've got a few people in the comments here. Let's move to that. Lindsay says, no school for 10 months for my 11-year-old. We heard a lot of that last week, didn't we? Kerry says, I'm sat waiting for the dreaded pickup call. Most days this happens after a traumatizing morning. Do you know, we've just been talking about those dreaded calls, you know, when the school's name comes up on your phone screen. I'm sure we'll cover that this morning. Vic says, morning, guys. My son is struggling to go to school, no diagnosis. That's okay, Vic. Like, you don't need a diagnosis to get help. And I know that people, I see that we share this information on our page and some people mock us, but I assure you, you do not need a diagnosis to get help, particularly if there are signs like this. If your child's not going to school, and that is really solid evidence as to needing support. So we've obviously got all the knowledge behind all of this on our Sunshine Academy because School Avoidance Awareness Week was at the end of September. And everything that we did, all of us here did a webinar, at least one webinar. And we've recorded them all and they're all on the Sunshine Academy. You can watch them back to back. So as you wait outside school, sadly, for those calls, you can actually just watch them on the phone app. It's so brilliant. If you want the link, just pop into the chat, Sunshine Academy, and I will send you the link after we finished. Sophia says, my child suffers massively with school avoidance. He has an EHCP. I keep in contact with the school, but on a few occasions they will mark it unauthorized. This potentially sounds like, I'm just going to go straight in for the kill here, the EHCP isn't suitable. So get in touch with us, Sophia, send us a message and we'll help you make sure that the provision is suitable. When the provision is suitable, you typically find there isn't avoidance because it's a safe place for a child to learn. But sometimes there's a journey getting to that end result of it being a provision. So sometimes it has to be, you have to get a lot of therapy built into the EHCP before that happens. But I'm sure we'll come on to that a little bit this morning. So there's loads of comments. Oh, there's another one here. My oldest is a school refuser and will be aggressive and violent. Sounds very familiar. One of mine was like that. My 6-year-old is starting to copy and has been doing the same, but with a lot more tears to the point he's uncontrollable. Is this copying? It's difficult to know without knowing your family, but potentially, yeah, because we can sort of catch anxiety and we can catch those. I mean, at the end of the day, if one child is going through something quite traumatizing and another child witnesses it, then that can also sort of have refer trauma, if you like, to the other child. So not necessarily copying in the traditional sense, but definitely a sort of mirroring of what they see. Absolutely possible. Anyway, I'm going to crack on. We're going to come back to your comments. Keep your comments coming. And we'll definitely come back to them at some point this morning. We're going to be here for the next 45 minutes or so. So, as I said, School Avoidance Awareness Week, I mean, we heard everything, ladies. We covered everything as well. We went from sort of the reasons why children might struggle to attend through to trauma, mental health. We talked about communication in schools and at home. We talked about the law, because so many people don't realize there are laws to be able to protect our children. We see a lot of petitions being shared online, and actually there's already laws in place, which is why we don't share them. The law is very good. It's very, very good, but we just need to know it, sadly, and that's send parent tax for you. We need to know so much more as send parents. But we definitely took several hundred, if not about 1,000 people actually, from frustrated and confused through to empowered and confident, which I just thought was lovely. And the feedback from our School Avoidance Awareness Week was just the best we've ever had. So well done, all of you, because I know all of you put an awful lot into doing those webinars. And when you're experiencing it yourself as well, and you're experiencing stuff at home, delivering this stuff is not easy. You know, it's a really emotive subject, and, you know, it's in your heart. It's why you do what you do. But Gabby, tell me, what were your key takeaways from the week? What were the things that really stood out for you?
It was really interesting because my webinar was particularly focused on meeting with schools and how you can get your voice heard. But what we kept coming back to was the amount of parents who felt that they weren't being heard. So despite having really, really strong stories and evidence of what they were going through, they just didn't feel heard, Chrissa.
And I guess that, you know, it starts with not feeling heard. And then when we look at sort of how parents present, us being parents, we either get louder or quieter, don't we? Because we either think, well, I'm going to have to shout louder then for you to hear me. And then we become a pest and that parent, or we become quieter and we start to withdraw. And both reactions to not being heard can trigger other processes like safeguarding. And I know, I mean, we've talked about this before. You're very well versed in the pandas field. And you know, I've got I've got a lot of neurodivergent daughters, but one of mine is autistic with ADHD with the PDA profile. And we just got told, because I got louder, we got told, oh, it sounds like you're making this up. We can't see what you see. We're going to send social care in. And it can trigger that, can't it? So it's quite scary.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, again, from a lived experience point of view, but also from the conversations we were having through School Avoidance Awareness Week, lots of people really do hold that fear that if they become too loud and voice their rights, really, which is effectively all they're doing, that they're going to be accused of other things, as you say, being that parent, which is very frustrating in itself, because there really shouldn't be such a thing as that parent, because you're just exercising your rights. But then also, as you say, lots of people saying, I just daren't say anything. And another really interesting conversation that we had a lot of was how very difficult it is to advocate for your own child, even as an advocate or a consultant. It's very, very difficult to go in and advocate for your own child, because you're so emotionally invested in that situation. And so that was really a key theme for me through some of the webinars that we did.
Jess Douglas, I can see you nodding there. I know that this is something that you've spoken about before, you know, on our lives and stuff. Talk to me about that. Why is it that, I mean, everybody at Sunshine widely recognizes you as the force to be reckoned with when it comes to legal procedures? If something isn't being done properly, you get it done, and that local authority will listen. You have an incredibly high success rate with your PAP letters, your pre-action protocol letters. So you being this force to be reckoned with, the Jess Douglas, right? Now switch to Jess as mum. What's going on? What's the difference? Why does it become so hard?
I think it is that fear, that constant fear of, well, my child doesn't have a diagnosis yet. And I've spent, like, my little boy's in year 4, and I noticed difficulties were sort of arising when he was in year 1. and I was bringing it to school's attention, we'd have him in year 1, stood in the playground crying outside the classroom door, and the teacher sort of ushering him in, and him going and crying every day. But that was okay. And when I mentioned, oh, he really doesn't like hand dryers and loud noises, the school just turned around and said, well, we haven't noticed anything, but he uses paper towels, not hand dryers. But not making the link. And it took until the end of year 2, when things got really, really severe, for a teacher to turn around and say, you know what, maybe there is something. But it took a lot of me pushing. And even though I am very forceful at work, and I am very confident in knowing I can get things done, and I do, when you have that fear in the back of your mind that ultimately you are a parent and they are the ones in control, being able to make those referrals, make those decisions, and put them blockers in your way, you are powerless in comparison to the Jess Douglas at work, because I don't have that, it sounds awful, but I don't have that legal title behind me.
Yeah.
I just have mum.
And it's sad, because just mum, that's a really powerful phrase. And I think that we often feel like we're either that parent or, oh, it's just mum. And we see it in our work, where you have a teacher. So a teacher will write a report about a child and it's factual. But the minute they add the parental report in, it's mum reports. So not your name. You haven't got a name, you haven't got an identity. It's mum reports, because oh, we don't know whether we believe that. And that's how it feels, regardless of how it's written down and how it's meant to be reported. That's how it feels. And, you know, I did the trauma webinar, which I thoroughly, really enjoyed. Like, I don't think I've ever enjoyed doing a webinar as much as that webinar. The first time I've ever presented it, brand new content. And what came out is, whilst the webinar was very much about the trauma the children experience, what we actually concentrated on was the trauma we were bringing from our own lives to the situation, and having that opportunity to pause and reflect and hold a mirror up. And by the way, this is not an easy process, but we are bringing that emotion. And I know for me, I say it quite a lot, I can also advocate for other children. People come into our hub and they ask me questions, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. No, you want to go back and say this. I know exactly what's right and wrong. But the minute it comes to my kids, I don't know whether it's my own trauma of having been put on child protection for having a daughter that presented differently in school to what she did at home. Not for very long, by the way. As soon as she was able to come off child protection, she came off with a big apology and a big LGO complaint that also was upheld. So we were definitely in the right. But that's a lot of trauma. Even though there was justice served, I've brought that trauma to my next round of parenting. Obviously, I've got 4 kids. My next round of parenting, I had to try and cleanse myself, like, intensively, of this trauma. And it's not possible to get rid of it all. It leaves a bruise on your emotions. It leaves a bruise on your nervous system. So then we're bringing fear into it. So I think that fear, emotion, trauma, anxiety. During my webinar, we talked about the window of tolerance. Our window of tolerance shrinks, which means then we're either in fight or flight. So we're like, no, you're not going to get that. Or, like I said, we go into ourselves and we go into fawn and freeze, which of course means that we then can retreat and it looks like we're not doing anything. Now, when we break it down, yes, it makes sense. Does it make it easier though? Absolutely not. So I think there is a real disconnect. Jess T, you are another one that people talk about all the time. I've seen all the reviews. I've heard, you know, the word on the street. Jess T gets some, I was going to say a rude word, gets things done. She gets things done. We're not going to go down that route. I'm foot in mouth this morning with my ADHD. She gets things done. But again, you know, you've said your child is struggling to attend, huge amounts of anxiety. It's different, isn't it, when it's you?
Yeah, it is different. And I think as well, the key word that I kind of heard there was the fear. And I think as well, as parents, you have so much hope that the school are going to support you. And don't get me wrong, there are schools out there that are absolutely incredible, but the school are fearful that they're not doing the right thing in line with statutory law, and they're not stepping over that red tape for each child to think outside of the box and think, right, there's no one size fits all, let's try something different. And I think that theme came through when I was doing my webinar, which was talking about strategies that work and strategies that don't work. And we were looking at kind of the coding system and the attendance charts, reward charts, certificates. And I think because schools are so fearful that if they try something else, everything's going to go wrong. But actually, I was asking, but it could go better. We could be making such a difference and such an improvement here just by thinking, let's try something new. Let's think outside the box. You know, I know we spoke about it before, but the DfE guidance around, you know, working together to increase or support attendance, improve attendance, it's there as guidance, and it talks about, you know, like the absolute end goal is, of course, actually it fits in between that we need to focus on. As a parent as well, for me, I've learned that yes, I am fearful, and the same with Jess did, that I don't hold that title as than I do with as a mum, but it's actually utilizing that and saying, actually, no, I have a right as a parent, and so does my child, and working positively with the school.
Yeah, I think that working positively with the school is the ultimate, isn't it? I know that for me, my job is well respected by my children's school, and they pick my brains and I will pick their brains, and we genuinely work together. So far, so good. Absolutely love everything they stand for, and it's a mainstream school, which is unheard of. But I have had it in the past where it's been made very clear to me that I hold no weight when it comes to advocating for my children, because I know what you do for a living. And I had that warning told to me. I know what you do. I know what you're up to. I was thinking, I'm not up to anything. I'm just a parent. Like, in this moment right now, I'm happy to be just mum. I'm just mum. I'm emotional like everyone else. I struggled to get them up this morning. I struggled to get them to eat their ready break. Other cereals are available. I struggled to get them out the door. I struggled to get them in the car every day. Yesterday, I said to my girls, and my girls now are all in senior school, and I said to them, do you know what, girls? This morning, with a smile on my face, very Brené Brown, this morning, I reminded you 14 times to do what you should do. They're normal things you've been doing since you were born. You know, brush your teeth, have your breakfast, get dressed. 14 times. I'm just leaving that there with you. And I walked off. So passive aggressive. But I think this time of year, stuff's happening. I don't know. I'm finding it hard. Now, Beth, when we met, obviously in your interview for Sunshine, well, many moons ago now, I'm going to say many moons ago. It feels like you've been here forever in all the best ways. Now, I had just been to the NAPLIC conference, where I had seen, this is a conference all for speech and language therapists and teachers and parents, and it's all about really bringing to the forefront the understanding of developmental language disorder, one of our favourite topics. And of course, when a child has got DLD, this could be the reason that they might avoid school, because it falls into that nice neat box of unmet needs. And I saw somebody present to me, which I've spoken to you about before, who had gone to this amazing school, and he talked all about like how he had had a really bad time in mainstream. His family had nearly written him off. They'd nearly sent him to another country because they couldn't cope with him. And they didn't understand, because the way that he was behaving was different to their family ethic and their family ethos and, you know, their core values. And then he went to this like magic school, and it sort of genuinely fixed everything, because he felt like he belonged and people were talking on his wavelength. And he was diagnosed with DLD. And then he realized there was this amazing supportive community. And at one point, nobody said he would be able to get a qualification of any type. This guy went on to do his GCSEs, A-levels, then he went to university. He's now a qualified social worker running 2 jobs. So he does a full-time job as a social worker, then he works on the side as his side hustle as a youth worker working with kids like him. And he completely attributed his entire success to the school you used to work at. So I bet you must have crossed paths at some time. what is it then that makes schools like that so magical, Beth? Like, how do we get it right?
Aside from the therapy input that there is there, I think it really is putting the children and young people first. It's listening to them, it's respecting them at all costs. So, as part of the policies for teachers and for staff, there are so many things that are put in place that should be there already about speaking to children and young people, and only use their name if it's in a positive way, include them in everything, every decision that's made about them, and never raise your voice. There are really fundamental things that are in there, and it's informed by a speech and language therapist who started the schools. But it makes a huge difference, and you just see the respect that the children and young people have, and their ideas and their input valued across the whole school system. And it just raises them up. It raises them up, and it creates this great atmosphere where they are at the center. And it's as simple as that. If you take away all the therapy side, it is as simple as that as to what makes that school so special. It really is. It's a huge.
Gorgeous. And like so simple, like you said, so simple, just actually treating children as human beings. I know in our school, they've just adopted the coaching method, where 3 times a week, the kids, and this school has got 2,000 kids in it. So what I'm talking about this because it's not a specialist provision, it's a mainstream provision, and therefore it's possible. 3 times a week, the kids have these coaching sessions where basically they have an experienced and qualified coach look at them, and make sure that they're spending time connecting with them. And there's only 10 in every coaching group, so it's easy to keep your eye on people, and they pick things up. And it might be that there's a follow-up from that. If you've got a child who's being particularly quiet, because they don't have to contribute, but everybody will start to sort of develop their own way of being part of that tiny little community that's part of a bigger community. And the head teacher is all about making sure that kids are seen and they're not missed just because it's a big school. And this is the way forward for that, because in a class of 30, kids do get missed, and they're moving from class to class really quickly. But how impactful that is, and he is a bit of a trailblazer, and he is somebody who widely recognizes if any of his crazy ideas, as he calls them, go wrong, he's going to lose his job. But fortunately, they're all going really right. But like you've just said, like, it could go right if we make these little changes. So in your webinars last week, ladies, was there a moment or a story that sort of really stuck with you? Was there anything that was shared with you that you thought was really good or like really heartbreaking, anything at all?
I can go first. For me, it was recognizing the impact that changing the positive reinforcement had on a particular child. So there was a child who had PDA, pathological demand avoidance profile, and they didn't respond well to praise or verbal praise at all. And so when the staff members were trying to figure out ways that they could positively reinforce this young person, because they were making that conscious effort to, walk into the school playground without mum and with the TA instead, making those subtle changes, the school recognized that actually there's other strategies that we could be using just subtly, like a thumbs up, because that is positive to that young person, rather than saying, oh my goodness me, that was so amazing, well done, Jimmy, and then instantly feeling really embarrassed, and that's a demand on me, and so I'm not going to do it again. So for me, that was transformative in that we can do it. We can find alternative ways that suit the young person. It doesn't have to be a script. It doesn't have to be followed the same way. So for me, that was life-changing, because it just shows that if you make these subtle changes, this is what I spoke about in my webinar, it doesn't have to be huge goals. It has to be small steps. If we see it like that, the young person is going to see it like that too, and it's not going to seem too overwhelming.
Yeah, it's vital. And I think I'm hoping as well that, the teachers took a lot away with them last week, because we did a dedicated, well, not last week, the week before, we did a dedicated week for teachers by teachers and a dedicated week for parents. And I thought I mean, we saw how many teachers attended, which is fantastic. And the feedback we've had from teachers as well is saying exactly that, Jess, where they're saying if we try and make these small changes, let's just do one a week and see what the impact is, because then we'll know what makes sense, what actually works. What sort of messages then did we hear consistently from families to show that the system is currently failing them? You know, you do get the one-off school like mine at the moment, and I'm very aware that, you know, a change of head can make or break, can't it? So I'm always very open-minded. Right now it works really well. But was there anything in particular that we're hearing that's a consistent problem, you know, in all areas of the country?
I think something that really stood out to me. So I did a webinar on the law, shock horror, and so many parents were saying that whilst their children weren't attending school, the school wasn't actually notifying the local authority. So then the local authority weren't aware, and so they weren't implementing any interim education. And sadly, this is something that I see probably on a daily basis. It's probably my most common pre-action protocol letter, to try and get interim education for children. And that lack of communication between a school and a local authority to actually inform them that this child isn't attending school and not receiving an education is fundamental in the system not working. If you don't take that step, this child just gets lost. And then the onus is then on the parent to have to involve people like Sunshine Support to actually get them what their child is entitled to. But it should have never reached that point in the first place. And that's something that I find really frustrating and really upsetting, to actually have to support parents when it's a simple email.
Yeah,
It's not a
absolutely.
lot to ask of a school to do that to help them.
And it becomes quite frustrating, I think, for parents when they can see their child's EHCP funding is being used for an empty place. And so the child is not receiving anything, but the money is going to somewhere that's not actually educating them. So just briefly then, let's paint a scenario like that. So child number one does not have an EHCP, hasn't attended for 2 weeks. What should a parent do? What are their rights?
So if they've not attended for 2 weeks, we usually say 15 days. So we'll add on a day for you. We would then be asking the school to contact the local authority to ask for interim education to be implemented for the child. Now, if the school does that and the local authority refuse, that's when you need a pre-action protocol letter. If the school don't do that, which sadly we see, we again can send a pre-action protocol letter to the local authority for interim education. And like you said before, they are very successful in getting things put in place for children.
And that's without an EHCP?
Yeah. You don't need an EHCP, you don't need a diagnosis. The law simply states if you've not been in school because of illness, exclusion or otherwise, and special educational needs of any kind are encompassed in the otherwise.
That's really useful to know. And if the child had an EHCP then, and like we heard, I think, did somebody say they were out of education for 7 or 9 months? You know, I mean, it doesn't need to be that long, but what are the rules if you've got an EHCP?
So generally how it would work is the school should be utilising that funding attached to the child's EHCP to implement some form of interim education for the child. If they don't do that off their own backs, then you would send a pre-action protocol letter to the local authority and they would demand that the school use that funding to implement the interim education for the child. So the duty still falls on the local authority, but they would utilise the funding that's already allocated to that child to actually pay for the interim education.
That's really, really useful. So anyone watching, if that's something that is happening to you, please do send us a message so we can support you in getting those PAP letters, those pre-action letters done. Gabby, talk to me about what schools do that unintentionally causes harm, because I know that this is something that you deal with on a day-to-day. And it's probably something that came up last week and stuff that you would have witnessed as well as a teacher pre-Sunshine.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to try and keep a positive spin in some ways, because I think one of the key things that did come out of School Avoidance Week was the importance of collaboration between local authority, school, parents, all of the stakeholders. But some of the things that we are definitely seeing are, and that were key in that week, were schools not listening to parents. And I think also not implementing provisions that are really simple to implement. So if we go back to what Jess was saying, Jess T, sorry, if we go back to what Jess T was saying, it's those really simple changes that are very easy to make, that schools feel, because they've done things in a certain way for so long, that they then can't do. And that's quite damaging for children, because if something's not working, you've got to try a different way. What's the point in flogging a dead horse? You've got to try and change things. And so I think from a school perspective, if you have that sense that you are not going to change anything, or not willing to change anything, or not willing to collaborate with parents and try and find a solution, then that's incredibly damaging. And that was something that I heard on repetition really over the week. I think also schools that are not prepared to take a trauma-informed approach, essentially, and schools that are taking a punitive approach. If you've got a child who's not attending school for whatever reason, if you find that family, it is not likely to achieve anything else other than more trauma. And I think those are probably the key damaging things that we were seeing. Possibly unintentionally, Chris. I don't think anybody goes into things intentionally if you're in education, but I think it's just misinformation and not necessarily knowing what's out there, what you can do, and what the law is, which is why our week was so important, really.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that ripple effect. I did a webinar at the beginning of the week and we talked about the ripple effect of what those fines do and how it fractures the relationship between home and school, particularly when parents find out it is at the head teacher's discretion. But also then it fractures relationships within the family. Like, it's far reaching and it doesn't fix the problem. There's no evidence to suggest that long-term fines help children go into school. Punishing children for disabilities or unmet needs is, I mean, when you put it like that, so incredibly unethical. Beth, with you've got such a beautifully holistic view on stuff. I just love the way that you work, and I love the way that you can sort of look at lots of things around the periphery to fix a problem. If you could gift a piece of knowledge right now to other teachers, a resource maybe, or a way of working, just one thing, if you could wave a magic wand and give it and say, this is going to work for you, but trust me, what would it be? What would that nugget of information be?
Question everything. So I had this incredible trainer when I was doing my PGCE, and she explained that it is so important to question policies, to question why rules are in place in schools. Don't just accept them and not want to rock the boat. Things like, why do we decorate the corridors with such amazing displays, but then not let children discuss them on the way past? Things like, why do we ask someone to speak at the back of the room in assembly, but not allow the children to turn their heads to look at who's speaking? Simple things, but that can have a wider impact and that can lead to bigger things. Start questioning the small things. Some things are there for a reason, but understand that reason and know how to explain it to the children and young people. Don't just accept what you're told is right, because it has to be there for a reason. That, I think, honestly, that was the single most important thing that I ever heard, and it started me questioning everything.
it's that remaining curious and not being judgmental, isn't it?
Yeah.
But also going back to what Gabby just said, I just made a note actually, doing things the way we've always done them, is just not a reason. And Gabby just mentioned, that was definitely a theme that came up. And I think as well, looking at Jess and Jess going through it at the moment, not that I'm calling out any schools here, but if they remained more curious and less judgmental, intent in their learning as well.
So much easier. I think if my son's school had have been more open to discussion and open to listening to what he needed, we would probably not be in as much of an anxious state now. Like, don't get me wrong, the teachers on the ground, sort of his class teachers, are generally very open. It seems to be more senior members of staff who are maybe a little bit old-fashioned, shall we say, which is obviously creating barriers in itself, because we don't need old-fashioned thinking. We need forward thinking and working with children and putting things in place that actually work for that particular child. But I think it's just a case of, as a parent, keeping those lines of communication open. If you think your child needs something, say it, because it can't make the situation any worse in terms of the level of support that's in place. I found that quite a lot. I've asked for a lot, and I've had a lot of support from you and from Kelly Jarvis to sort of work out what I can ask for. I went in having an idea what he wanted, what he needed, and what I deemed was a reasonable adjustment. And that's all they have to make, is reasonable adjustments. I was never asking for the moon and the stars, because I know I'm not going to get that. But it's just for a school to be willing to listen, I think, is a huge thing.
Yeah. And I think, I don't think school avoidance or school non-attendance is a new problem. I think that it's always existed. And as I say quite frequently, I think that our safeguarding policies are better now. So we know the kids are not in the class. Before they didn't. I'm sorry, but there were loads of kids missing from my classes as I was growing up because they were behind the bike sheds doing whatever they were doing to get their sensory break. But that wasn't recorded. But equally, when I look back at when I was in school, you were always going to get the good teachers and the bad teachers. And the good teachers are the ones that sit and make the time for you. Exactly what Beth just said. They make it they make you the center of their world for that moment, or at least that's how it feels. And it's interesting when I go back through my own education, being undiagnosed neurodivergent, I had a physical disability as well. Looking back through my education, the subjects that I did the best in were the teachers who really took the time to just understand me. I can't honestly say that they spent their evenings coaching me or anything like that. It was just for connection, and being straight up with me. That's what I needed. But yeah, so I think that it's not, when people are saying it's this growing problem and parents have got these sharp elbows and they're saying their kids can't attend, it's not a new problem. It's probably grown a lot because of COVID. There are many different reasons. I mean, I could spend another couple of hours talking through all the reasons with COVID, because you've got lockdown, you've got babies being born at that time, lack of nurseries, whatever. There's loads. But we need to appreciate the times that we're in. And it's really tough. It's really, really tough. But I think that ultimately we've all the adults in a child's life have to work on rebuilding that trust. And it's hard because you all have to be on the same page in order to do it. Gabby, is there anything in particular with building trust that you think, I mean, you were talking about, bridging that gap of communication between home and school in your webinar. Was there anything in particular that you can share today? And people can go and watch the webinar, by all means, comment below and we'll give you the link. But what's a golden nugget of information that for any teacher or parent watching about rebuilding trust?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it, when trust has been broken, but it can be rebuilt, and that's really important. And I think that comes from listening. I think that so many teachers, and I can honestly speak from experience. So if any teachers are here, I'm speaking as a teacher now. If you make a mistake, own it, and then listen and repair it. And I can safely say, and you know, I don't know who's in today and who's listening, but the parent may well be here. But in my experience, I made a huge mistake and thought that it was the parent's fault, the reason this particular child in my school wasn't attending. And it was only when I met with her and we sat down and we talked together, and I recognized that her other child wasn't struggling to attend. And suddenly there was a connection. Actually, this isn't the family's fault, because otherwise the other child would not be attending as well. There'd be a pattern. And it was only sitting down and listening to her and saying, holding my hand up and saying, I got this wrong. I've approached this in the wrong way. We need to reapproach this from a different perspective. Going out, researching, I found Sunshine Support at that point. But that connection, that listening, don't feel like you have to be the expert, parent to the experts in their children. So listen. So I think essentially what I'm saying is active listening, Chrissa, to be honest.
And, you know, that reflection, that is so incredibly powerful. We talk a lot within our team about failing forward. We make mistakes, we learn from them, we fail forward. We shouldn't see it as a negative. And this is what I teach kids. As you know, I talk about it all the time with my kids. But actually hearing it from you as a teacher saying, yeah, I got it wrong. And I reflected and I learned, and I went back to the parents and said, I've got it wrong. I think we need to be doing it differently. You know, and parents, you know, from my perspective as a parent, if a teacher says that to you, please, like, give them a hug, because that's a major, major thing for somebody to accept when I know what we're like as SEND parents, and we can go on the attack, and it can be very difficult to support us when we're in that fight or flight and we're coming out of our window of tolerance. Okay, so I'm just going to go through some of the comments here then. My daughter has an IDP. Is this equal as an EHCP? Yes, it's the Welsh version of the EHCP. So we were all on statements of SEN. England transferred in 2014, Wales in 2022, was it? Something like that. But yes, your IDP system confuses me. I cannot get my head around it, and I don't like it. Quite simply, I think it's really hard. But we do have a Welsh team here. So if you need to pick the brains, we've got 3 members of our Welsh team based in Wales, and they are incredible. And I just like getting my Welsh fix of the accent because I've been gone too long from my home country. What does an interim education look like? So Jess D, you mentioned about, you know, local authorities, if the child's been out of school 15 days, then they have to organise this interim education. What does that look like?
So it can be very different for every child. There's nothing in law that says what an interim education should look like, which makes it extremely challenging at times. The general rule of thumb is you're looking at between 6 and 10 hours a week of now traditionally this is tuition, whether that be online or in person. In some situations the local authority will fund, for example, a forest school or some form of animal sort of involved therapy provision type thing. But the important thing to bear in mind with interim education is this is not going to be 9 till 3. They only have to provide a suitable education. So you're not going to get all singing, all dancing, everything you want. They just have to meet the bare minimum.
Okay, that's fine, but still better than nothing. And actually,
Absolutely.
if you've got the EHCP as well, really, we need to be calling an annual review because this provision is not suitable.
Definitely.
And one of the things I would let people know as well, if you've already signed up for School Avoidance Awareness Week, you'll be a member of our Sunshine Academy. Do check out on there the EOTIS webinar, because that will talk to you all about education other than in school. So, you know, as you're building, maybe your child does want to go back into a school type provision, but they can't right now. And so they need something more therapeutic. This is where the EOTIS can really come into its own. But that can also be a permanent fixture because it's reviewed annually. So it might be that your child actually ends up never going back into a school building and getting their education in a completely bespoke way. I'm all for it. I know local authorities hate us talking about it because it costs them money and resources, but Kids need what they need. Chloe says, school are refusing for me to take voice or written minutes. Is that allowed? We'll be talking about what they can and can't meet in his EHCP. Well, actually, Chloe, I would say that this is an adjustment. I would request it personally as a reasonable adjustment. As SEND parents, we can often be overloaded with a lot of information. Many of us realize that when our children are diagnosed, oh, I thought that bit was like normal. I'm like that. So then all of a sudden you get your own diagnosis. And so actually, if you're neurodivergent, processing information can be really, really tricky. So having that reasonable adjustment is a request you can make. And I would say it's incredibly unreasonable for somebody not to allow you to take notes. I know that some of them get very, very nervous about recording sessions. And there was once upon a time an advocacy agency, and it used to make me shudder. And they would insist on taking private recordings and telling the parents, don't tell anyone, and we'll just take this recording under the desk. Don't do that. You're going to end up in more trouble. That's something we do not advocate for here. Everything has to be above board. But at the same time, you know, it's playing fairly both ways. So you can, and particularly if you're talking about what they can and can't meet in an EHCP, that sounds like an annual review. So actually that should be minuted. So you can take a friend and let them minute it. Absolutely. Do EHCPs exist in Wales? No, they're IDPs. In fact, you can see one of our consultants have commented after you, called Rachel Parry Sunshine. Rachel heads up our Welsh team. So if you need any help with Welsh stuff, do let us know, because our team are ready to help. A lot of people asking how they get in touch with us. You can go via our website. It's probably the easiest way, because you go straight through to the lovely Emma, and Emma will be able to respond to you. But if you go to sunshine-support.org, you can submit an inquiry through there. I've also put a link to our Sunshine Academy in the comments as well. So if you want to sign up to watch all of those School Avoidance Awareness Week webinars, and hundreds more, by the way, then you can do that. It's only £10.99 a month for parents. It's an absolute bargain. You can cancel at any time. So Lee says, our school basically said we're keeping her off because we want special, and we don't agree she gets a good deal here, and we know that she's happy. That's something that was said to me. Like, you're being manipulative. You clearly want a special provision. That's just so wrong, isn't it? None of us want our kids to be off school. I just want people to know that. We'd much rather than be in. We would much rather than be in. Jess T, how much easier is your day when your kids are in school happy?
Yes, so much easier. And also it's the mum guilt, isn't there? Because you can kind of, you know that your child has gone in safely and happy, and that you can come home and you can do your work.
Yeah.
So yeah, so much easier all round.
You know, somebody said to me, I'm a SEND parent, but I'm not one of them. And I was like, oh, what's one of them? Like, I'm always curious. What's one of them? Or, you know, the ones that ring the school every day. And I was like, do you think they enjoy it? Do you think they really enjoy it? Because I'm telling you now, they don't. I've got a real hangover from one of our schools that rang me at one point daily about negative stuff, and it really affected my mental health. And now I'm trying to wipe the slate clean, because the new school do ring me daily, but it's to say nice things, and I'm like, oh, it's quite refreshing. Just giving a phone call home and 20 reward points because your kid's been amazing. It's the usual kid, by the way. Hopefully my kids aren't watching, but it is the same one every time. She's very good, but she's very outspoken. Beth, you know who I'm on about, Beth. You know, she literally thinks she's your best friend. So Sarah, sorry, says, I had to do a discrimination complaint before school started supporting, as they should be, if they only could have done this from the beginning and avoid the cause avoided the trauma caused. And I think this is really sad. We see this quite a lot, where parents do think that in order to get a service, they need to complain. And then things sometimes actually correct themselves, because they realize, they're not going to get away with this. But it makes me really sad that they have to go this far. If children are getting in the door, even if it's just for pastoral support or counselling, does this count as attendance? What do you think, Jess or Beth?
I don't really think that counts as attendance, to be honest.
Then on the register, if they're ticking them there, it's not flagging that they're not there, is it?
No, it's not. It's not. But them being in the school for pastoral, I've seen this happen a few times where they'll go into school, they'll get signed into the register, they'll be there for half an hour, and then they go home, but it looks like they've been there for the whole morning. And this then becomes a barrier to seeking interim education. And so, no, it's not attendance. Being there for very short periods of time doesn't count. And the school shouldn't be approaching the situation in that way, because all they're doing is negatively impacting the child in the long run. Whilst it looks good for their register and their targets or whatever, ultimately that's not what this situation is about.
No. I think Beth and I in our webinar, we covered this a little bit, and I said it's like coming into my office and throwing a load of marshmallows at my head and calling it eating.
Yes. Yeah, there's no education being had then. And I can understand that, like, working together to improve school attendance, they have a whole section about building up that connection and keeping the connection, so that it's important for the school, for the child to be coming into school still. I don't agree that that is the case for every child, but I think it's really important as well that it's clear that no education is being had in that time for them to get further support.
And of course, in our webinar, Beth, we talked about the 3-step approach to sort of recovering from this and re-engaging children back into education. And, you know, honest record keeping is a must, really, by both, you know, teachers and parents. We have to be honest about it. But also looking at, yes, okay, this sort of interim pastoral care stuff might be okay for this week. However, long term, this is just not going to work, and it's not an education. So it's that being honest, isn't it? Being honest, being reflective, listening. Do you know, I mean, they are just core life skills. Are they not what we were told as children anyway? Listen, be honest, you know, work together,
Adapt.
reflect, adapt. Yeah. And it's so, I think for me as a neurodivergent person, I know that we're often told as neurodivergents that we are rigid. However, I would say we are the most flexible people when it comes to stuff like this. So just ask us what we think might work, you know. But oh well, I mean, look at the time, ladies. It's 10:32. We've come to an end. It's been an absolute delight. We should do it more often. We're getting together soon, and I can't wait. I am so excited to be getting together with everyone. But for anybody watching, you know, if you want anybody's help here, I know that quite a few of you have closed your books because you're just too full. But we also have a team of what are they, like 12 advocates, consultants now. So, you know, it's not just us. There are others. So if you would like any help, don't suffer in silence. By all means, head to our website, submit an inquiry, or hire one of our consultants. We can, you know, help you. But I would say that the takeaway for me is just sign up to watch those webinars, because for $10.99, this could be absolutely life-changing for children in your class or the children in your life. So I think I've covered everything, ladies. I think we've done a very good job this morning. And now we go back to doing the work that we just talked about. So fighting the great fight. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's been a joy.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sure I'll speak to you shortly.